Even Pope Francis did one. Even our president did one. Every year around this time, the Oxford English Dictionary people list the new words that have come into existence in the English language. And each year they pick one word that summarizes the changes in the culture that produced those words. Recent winners include unfriend, GIF, not GIF, GIF. Y'all know what a GIF is? Raise your hand if you know what a GIF is. Oh, I'm impressed. This morning, nobody knew. Another one of those words was squeezed middle. That's about more than my belt. And so it goes. The word of the year is always for them an editorial choice. It's meant to spark conversation and discussion about our world and our society. And it's my hope that this reflection tonight will do the same for you, that it will spark some sort of reflection in your mind, some sort of conversation and discussion in your world about just this issue. And I really believe they hit a home run in that regard with their choice last year at this time. Their 2013 choice for the word of the year. Anybody know what it is? Yell it out if you know it. I am very impressed. That's right. The word of the year last year was selfie. Dang. As you all know, a selfie is a photograph that one has taken of oneself, typically with a smartphone or a webcam, and uploaded to a social media website. There are 90 million photos bearing the hashtag selfie on Instagram alone. It's a word that captures for some, at least for those editorial writers and for many others actually, it's a word that captures for some the self-absorption of what they perceive in this tech-savvy generation. Who really cares, if you think about it? Who really cares what my face looks like from an arm's distance away? And more than once a day at that? There was a high school kid I talked to just last year who took no less than 7 selfies a day, he told me. 7 selfies a day. And now they even have these extended arm selfies, you know, so that you can even see more of yourself. And I saw somebody just using that the other day. Taking pictures of yourself all the time can be really weird. And it can be quite a self-interested thing to do, really. Especially if you put them up on the internet and expect feedback. It's asking people to validate how your face looks. Not who you are as a person, or anything beyond how well you can put yourself together for an impromptu snapshot. Now, doing this a little bit is fine, but no joke. The growing trend of taking smartphone selfies is linked already to mental health conditions that focus on a person's obsession with their looks. If there is an ugly truth to be proclaimed here, isn't it this? That each generation here in this chapel tonight, each generation has its own version of the selfie. Their own experience of the world that focuses on them and focuses on their own needs, often to the exclusion of others. whether it's economically, politically, or socially, however we name them. Selfies are each generation's and each individual's propensity to look at and interpret the world, always in relationship to how it impacts me, for better or for worse, how it impacts me. And it's every generation's way of evaluating accordingly and responding accordingly to how all these things affect me. And into that cultural and individual experience comes 3 correctives tonight. 3 people whose lives were anything but this notion of the selfie. The first corrective is Isaiah. Isaiah the prophet. He invites us to realize that it is really and truly the future of the whole world that God cares about. It's the future of the world that God cares about, not how you look tonight. Isaiah proclaims the dream that is in the heart of God, that love can make its way to us, that love can have its way with us, and that we can find our way to love. Prepare the way of the Lord, Isaiah said, shouting into the night of his day. Prepare the way of the Lord. Make it possible for this love to reach people now. Make it possible in people's lives for them to reach this love that is God. In other words, make it easier to establish this world in love. And Isaiah invites us to be about creating this world and never not seeing ourselves in relationship to this world that is coming, that is meant to come, that must come for everybody's sake. We've got to learn to not see ourselves in any other way but in relationship with this world, with that world, rather. In other words, and this is really huge, my friends, I really don't exist. I don't really exist if I don't see myself always in relationship with my and our future. I don't really exist if I don't see myself only connected to people. I don't exist if I'm not helping all men and women without exception find their way to this love and find their way to one another in this love. As Peter prays in the second reading tonight, why? So that no one will perish. People are perishing for lack of love. We've got to open this way to love so that no one will perish. The second corrective is John the Baptist. John the Baptist would never take a selfie. That's one conclusion you can draw clearly from this gospel for the second Sunday of Advent tonight. John the Baptist was not interested in himself. John the Baptist was not interested in one opinion of anybody else about him. He was not a person who would have been uploading selfies, posting pictures of his meals, his latest meal on Facebook, sending out tweets, and spending hours each day alerting the social world to his every thought and activity. John the Baptist had no desire to draw attention to himself. Rather, his desire was to draw attention to an other. This was so much what he was about that it became his whole mission. And it so absorbed him that John cared little about what he looked like to others or how many thumbs up likes he got at any given moment of his life. John the Baptist had something far more pressing on his mind than himself and his needs and his disappointments and his feelings. John had something far more pressing on his mind than himself. John's mission that absorbed him totally was to prepare the way for the Lord. He called people to turn away from selfishness, to turn away from self-absorption that had so hardened their hearts, so that they might be ready to welcome this one who is far mightier, who was coming. To fully receive the Lord, to know love, we need to be less self-absorbed. We need to be less self-centered. We need to be less narcissistic. If we are so concerned about ourselves, we will never have the time to notice the Lord or the poor and the suffering whose company he is so often found. We will never have the room in our hearts where he can be birthed into the world. No room in the inn. One of those early Christmas stories announced, no room, there's no room in the inn. There was nowhere empty enough for him to be born. We were so full of ourselves that there was nowhere empty enough to give birth to Mary's child. My friends, it is too true of too many of us and of all of us at different times in our lives that given our egos, there's no room left. There's no room left in our hearts for the birthing of love right here. We are so full of ourselves. We don't see that I really, truly only exist in relationship to this future that is us together in love. We don't see that we only really exist connected to each other. That we don't see that we're connected to the future of the poor. It's who we are, or we are nowhere, nothing. John the Baptist might warn us that the more selfies we take, the more self-absorbed we are, the greater the chance that we will miss the Lord who wants to come into our lives. Too full of ourselves for there to be room at the end. There's a third corrective tonight. Right now, even this weekend, this world is remembering a man who died in South Africa just last year at this very time. His name was Nelson Mandela. And I talked about him extensively in a homily this very Sunday last Advent, because it was just after he died. He's a man that has captured my imagination who's definitely one of those people who inspires me and I look up to very much. He also is one of those people who would not be taking one of those selfies. Nelson Mandela wrote, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. It is what difference we have made in the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. What I hear when I see a selfie is, I'm thinking of me. Now I hope you're thinking of me. I'm thinking of me right now. Now I want you to be thinking of me right now. This morning after Mass, a little 9-year-old came up to me and said in one of those exasperating voices only a 9-year-old can have, you know, Father, we have that already. We don't call it a selfie anymore. We call it an ussie. So let's try it. This would be the first ever at the CSC ussie. Because you see, I don't exist really separate from you. I don't even want to. Not bad. I'd give it a thumbs up.